My fiancée sneered at me in front of her entire family and said she'd forget me in a week because she'd already found someone better. I simply picked up the ring. That alone set her off. So here we are, Reddit. My fiancée cheated, humiliated me publicly, and claimed she'd be over me in 7 days. Buckle up. It gets messy. I'm Luke, 32 from Pittsburgh. 3 years of my life blew up over a Sunday dinner, but honestly, it turned out to be the best thing that could have happened. You'll understand soon enough. Let me give you some context. I rebuild heavy machinery for a living. Caterpillar excavators, John Deere equipment, anything with hydraulics and enough power to flatten a city block. There's something satisfying about taking a wrecked machine and bringing it back to life. The shop is wedged between two bridges on the Mon River. During lunch, I sit outside eating the exact same sandwich I've made for 2 years. Turkey, Swiss, apple slices, black coffee in an actual thermos, watching coal barges move downstream. My supervisor Jake likes to joke I'm the only guy under 40 still carrying a thermos. Fair enough. Tuesday and Thursday nights, I train at Clove's Boxing Club on the south side, an old school gym that smells like leather and decades of sweat. Coach Clove barely speaks. He corrects your form with a tap from his walking stick or a grunt in Russian. But the real point of this story is my project car, a 1973 Dodge Challenger I pulled from a field in Washington County. Total rust heap when I found it, but the numbers matching 340 small blocks still breathed under the surface. The frame was solid, and I'd spent 2.5 years bringing it back step by step. I was torn between keeping the original TorqueFlite automatic or swapping in a TMC 5-speed. Purists would definitely have opinions, but it's my car. My best friend Ray, who I served with in the Guard, thinks I'm crazy for taking on a frame-off restoration while planning a wedding. He works in security systems now and believes everything needs cameras and access control. He's also the one who pretty much saved me during this mess, so remember his name. After his own rough divorce, he convinced me to start keeping better records. Memories fade, but receipts don't lie, he always says. Smart advice. Now about the wedding expenses. Fiona and I agreed last February to split everything evenly. I still have the text. February 12th, her exact words, "Makes sense. We're both adults with jobs." After that, I tracked every payment. The venue deposit was $2,800. I paid it, sent the receipt, and she eventually sent her half, 3 weeks later, claiming a commission check was delayed. She was in real estate, so I figured it made sense at the time. Turns out it didn't. When the caterer needed $2,200 up front, the same thing happened. I paid, she sent only $800, and promised the rest later. Meanwhile, she kept posting Instagram stories from high-end restaurants, weekend trips, designer shopping sprees, spa days, yet never had money for our agreed shared bills. Huge red flag, but I didn't push it. I'm not the type to start fights over money with someone I plan to marry, but I kept every record. In diesel repair, problems don't fake anything. You diagnose, order the right parts, fix it, move on. People are much different. Fiona treated our wedding like her personal showcase. Pinterest boards, vendor spreadsheets, a massive planning binder. She obsessed over centerpieces and invitation fonts like they were world issues. Meanwhile, I handled the actual payments while watching our savings shrink. She kept hinting about upgrading the venue, increasing the guest list, and choosing a pricier package because people will judge us if we cheap out. When I reminded her we were already stretching the budget, she suggested I could work more overtime or even sell my Challenger to pay for what really matters. Then the breakdown started. One Tuesday, she announced, didn't ask, that her family wanted us over for Sunday dinner because her mom needed to finalize details. I told her I'd be there at 3 p.m. after finishing the new bushings installation on the Challenger's front suspension. She rolled her eyes and said, I always prioritized my little hobby over family obligations. When I explained that suspension work requires precision, she shot back that I shouldn't have wasted money on a rust bucket. In heavy equipment diagnostics, ignoring early warning signs leads to catastrophic failure. I should have applied that same logic to my relationship. I was about to learn the hard way. Sunday came. I arrived at her parents' place exactly at 3. Spent the morning pressing control arm bushings, so I'd scrubbed my hands with pumice soap and cleaned under my nails. Her sister Janet and her husband were there, her dad grilling outside, her mom in the kitchen. For the first hour, everything seemed normal. Work, weather, travel plans. Fiona kept texting and avoiding conversations about my job or the Challenger. Red flags everywhere. The shift happened when Janet asked about honeymoon plans. Fiona launched into a description of upgraded resort packages and first-class flights, none of which we'd agreed to. Then she made a pointed remark about how some people weren't contributing financially to shared dreams. And she stared right at me. Then came the full attack. My hobby car was supposedly a waste of money. My ambitions weren't big enough. My job was fine for someone without goals. The house I rent was embarrassing. My routine was boring. My friends weren't going anywhere in life. According to her, she'd been settling the entire time, hoping I'd grow up eventually. Then she brought up Kevin. Not just a friend, but someone who actually has ambition. Someone with a real career who took her to meaningful places and treated her the way she deserved. They'd been connecting for months, and he showed her what real chemistry felt like. Her whole family acted like this wasn't new information. She pulled off the engagement ring and threw it at me. Not handed, threw, like she wanted it to hurt. It bounced off my chest and clattered on the floor. Then she said the ring was cheap, that I'd bought it from a discount store, and that Kevin would never be that cheap. The room went silent, except for her rant about wasting 3 years on someone who fixes trucks and spends weekends in a garage. Then that final line, "I'll forget you in a week." Honestly, I'm already halfway there. But instead of anger, I felt this strange clarity. She was showing me exactly who she was. I picked up the ring, white gold with a quarter-carat diamond I'd saved 4 months for. Not cheap, but I didn't correct her lies. No point. You don't argue with someone who's chosen to humiliate you. I walked to her father, pulled her spare house key from my keychain, and handed it over. "Thanks for dinner, Mr. Parker." That was it. No defending myself. No explanations. I walked outside, texted Ray one word, implemented. Before I reached the end of the driveway, Ray's Silverado pulled up. We'd planned for this. He didn't ask questions, just nodded for me to get in. By the time we hit the main road, my phone was buzzing nonstop with what I assumed were Fiona's messages. I didn't check. No use reading anything while emotions were still raw. When we got home, reality set in. Change the locks, sort bank accounts, cancel vendors, update work contacts. Handle the practical things first. What really burned me wasn't just the cheating. It was the fact she humiliated me while still owing me money. She used our joint account to fund her affair, then called me cheap. Monday morning, 6 a.m., I replaced every lock with a grade 1 deadbolt Ray recommended. Fiona had texted 18 times and called 11 times before 7 a.m. I screenshotted everything, then blocked her. The messages went from fake apologies to rage to threats about coming by. Interesting how "I'll forget you in a week" turned into nonstop obsession. Work was normal, rebuilt an injector pump, then updated HR, removed her from every file, added Ray and my brother as emergency contacts. That night I started what I called the audit. Joint checking, $3,047.32. Joint savings, $1,023.18. Subscriptions, statements, screenshots. What I could change immediately, what needed signatures. Wedding vendors were more complicated. I sorted contracts, policies, and refund terms into folders. The caterer offered a 60% refund within 2 weeks. The venue allowed cancellation with a processing fee. DJ offered full refund with enough notice. I found the February text where she wrote, "Makes sense. We're both adults with jobs." Highlighted it. Timestamp saved. Started an incident log. Date, time, contact attempts. Strictly factual. Tuesday at boxing, Coach Clove tapped my shoulder. "You pull punch back too fast. Follow through." The man never misses. Wednesday, Ray arrived with storage bins and his label printer. We went through everything that belonged to Fiona. Her entire presence in my home fit into 2 boxes: clothes, toiletries, a few books, a mug she claimed was lucky, and an ugly throw pillow. Each item was photographed and logged. No confusion later. Ray also helped set up a shared spreadsheet tracking vendor deadlines and refunds. Clean, color-coded, automatic calculations. The man is a spreadsheet wizard. The Challenger became my therapy. I stripped the interior completely. Seat, panels, dash, carpet, headliner. everything labeled and stored. Ordered new parts, Edelbrock intake, MSD ignition, seat covers. Slow, steady progress. By Friday, I had full control. Accounts secure, locks changed, vendor deadlines tracked, her things boxed, incident log updated. The wedding was 6 weeks away, but most cancellations worked in my favor since I moved quickly and followed every rule. Tuesday morning, 6:30 a.m., I began calling vendors. The venue confirmed cancellation and refund timing. Caterer processed the 60% refund. DJ issued a full refund. I logged everything: dates, names, confirmation numbers. By the time I left for work, 8 vendors had been contacted, 6 cancellations completed. All refunds were heading to me because I'd been the one paying. Thursday, I handled the ring. Took it to Morrison's Fine Jewelry in Shadyside. The appraiser checked it for about 8 minutes, compared the diamond to grading charts, and quoted me the transmission needed attention. She was determined to get it right and had all her measurements and calculations recorded. The T56 transmission we were picking up weighed roughly 150 pounds with the bell housing. We carefully loaded it using moving blankets and straps, securing it properly in her truck bed. Everything was done professionally. No damaged threads or scratched cases. Laura noticed the organized documentation folder on my passenger seat when I grabbed my gloves. She didn't pry, which I appreciated. On the drive back, she mentioned she'd been working on the Camaro for 14 months. The engine was rebuilt professionally, suspension sorted, but the automatic transmission was worn out. She wanted to upgrade it for reliability and performance. Back home, I returned to the Challenger. The brake system rebuild went smoothly. I started reconstructing the wiring harness with clearly labeled circuits and proper gauge wiring throughout. Reinstalling the motion-activated floodlight worked perfectly. It triggered each time someone approached the driveway, which helped document continued surveillance. That month, there were 4 more drive-by incidents. Each was logged with date, time, and duration. By mid-November, the pattern was clear. The police advised me to continue detailed documentation and consider filing a protection order if behavior escalated beyond the ongoing contact and surveillance. I wasn't at that stage yet, but the incident log was becoming substantial. Through all this, life stayed on course. Vendor refunds were processed as expected. The small claims court date was set for early December. The Challenger restoration was progressing nicely. 2 months ago, I'd been planning a wedding. Now my focus had shifted to rebuilding a classic muscle car and documenting harassment patterns. One Friday evening, the motion light triggered 3 times between 9:30 and 10:15 p.m. Same silver Honda, same slow reconnaissance passes. I logged the details and closed the notebook, returning it to the kitchen drawer. It was also becoming clear that I needed to reconnect with friends and activities outside work and boxing. For example, Laura from Parts had asked for help moving transmission components for her Camaro project. Saturday morning, at the salvage yard off Route 19, we arrived at 7 a.m. sharp. Laura was already talking to the owner about gear ratios for a '69 Camaro Z28. She had her specs written in a notebook and knew exactly which transmission combinations would work with the car's rear-end ratio. We lifted the T56 transmission into her truck bed carefully, using proper moving techniques. Laura appreciated the organized documentation folder on my passenger seat, but she didn't ask intrusive questions. On the drive back, she mentioned the Camaro project had been ongoing for 14 months. Engine rebuilt, suspension sorted, but the transmission was still the weak link. She planned to replace it for reliability and performance. Back in my garage, I focused on the Challenger. I methodically continued the rebuild, installing brake lines, checking hydraulics, replacing worn components, and labeling everything for clarity. Working with my hands was therapeutic. It let me avoid thinking about the relationship drama. By keeping everything organized, incident logs, vendor refunds, court paperwork, and personal property documentation, I maintained control. Fiona's harassment continued with texts from unknown numbers from Pittsburgh, Philly, and even Ohio. Each message was screenshotted and timestamped before being blocked. They were manipulative with lines like, "Everyone knows you're being petty." "My family thinks you're pathetic." "Kevin treats me like a queen. You never appreciated what you had." You can ignore me all you want, but you'll never find anyone better than me. The pattern was clear. Fiona was attempting manipulation 101. Word of her side of the story circulated, claiming I abandoned her at a family dinner, stole the ring, and refused to pay my part of the wedding. She conveniently left out the affair and that she owed me money. The next workplace incident confirmed her escalating behavior. The following Wednesday, I was leaving work around 5:45 p.m. when our security guard approached me near the gate. Fiona had been sitting in visitor parking and tried to enter the property. When asked to leave, she claimed she was my fiancée and cited a family emergency, saying I refused to return her property from my truck. This was false. She had already collected all her belongings, just 2 boxes. I logged the incident and called the non-emergency police line that evening. I provided the pattern of contact attempts, including the workplace incident, and requested a case file for documentation. The officer was professional and methodical, treating the situation seriously. His advice: continue logging every incident with dates, times, and specifics. If she appeared at work or home, call while it was happening so they could document it in real time. Reference the case number each time to track escalation patterns. The real insight about Kevin came 2 weeks later through a mutual friend. Fiona's behavior was far more calculated than I realized. Kevin wasn't a new friend who sparked her interest. They'd been involved for at least 8 months, well before we signed the final wedding venue contract. Fiona posted photos with him on private social media while pretending to be a devoted fiancé in public. Kevin's wife discovered explicit messages dating back to March, showing Fiona complaining about pretending to be happy while planning a wedding she didn't want. Screenshots revealed her asking Kevin how to escape the situation without appearing at fault. This wasn't a sudden, passionate affair. It was a deliberate exit strategy with a backup plan. Kevin temporarily moved out after his wife confronted him, but told Fiona their relationship wasn't serious enough to justify breaking up his marriage. In the same week, she lost both her affair partner and her fiancé, explaining the escalating harassment. Her king turned out to be more of a court jester, running when things got real. Narrative-driven, and keeping the tone grounded and mature. If you want it more dramatic, more YouTube story style, or shorter, just tell me. I kept my routine steady, boxing with Coach Clav twice a week, wrenching on the Challenger, rebuilding the wiring harness with proper gauge wire, installing a new floodlight, and documenting every time someone approached the driveway. 4 more drive-by incidents happened that month. By mid-November, the pattern was obvious. Police told me to keep documenting and consider a protection order if things escalated. Vendor refunds cleared. My small claims date was set. The Challenger was finally taking shape. 2 months earlier, I'd been planning a wedding. Now my focus was muscle cars, training sessions, and security logs. Laura wanted manual control of the test drive. When we pulled into my driveway, I asked if she wanted to see the project. She followed me to the garage. The Challenger was finally starting to look like a real restoration. Laura inspected the brake lines I'd routed along the frame rails, well clear of the exhaust and road debris. She traced the curve around a suspension pickup point and nodded. "You account for suspension travel up front?" she asked. I had 2 inches each direction at full lock, plus clearance at the bump stops. We talked shop for about 15 minutes. No shortcuts, no ego, just 2 people who understood mechanical work. She knew her tools, and she handled her own problems. Around noon, Ray texted, the group was meeting for go-kart racing next weekend in South Hills. "Real racing karts," he said. I told Laura, and she laughed. "Sounds dangerous." "What time?" I added her to the group chat. Tuesday evening, leaving work, I spotted the same silver Honda 3 blocks from the yard, creeping along, obviously watching. This time, I caught the plate. Pennsylvania KDJ 4397. Logged it. By Friday, Laura confirmed she was in for the race. Ray told her it was the real deal, not amusement park stuff. She warned us she was competitive with anything that had wheels and an engine. 2 weeks until court. Go-kart racing Saturday. Challenger interior to finish Sunday. My harassment documentation was solid enough that I didn't worry anymore. Sometimes the best solution to external chaos is focusing on work that matters, and people who respect your craft. The track was behind a Mount Oliver shopping center. about 20 Rotax engine carts, and a quarter-mile course with proper barriers. We signed waivers, got helmets, and strapped in. None of us had raced before, but Laura figured out the racing line almost instantly. Ray provided color commentary. 15 minutes in, someone started yelling in the pit. Fiona's voice. I pulled into pit lane and shut off the cart. Laura and Ray did the same. Fiona was arguing with the staff, pointing at us. She'd followed us there. We're leaving, I said. Fiona shoved past a staff member, ranting about how I was embarrassing her. The track manager stopped her. Sir, please don't engage. We're handling it. She grabbed my helmet, slammed it against the concrete, and cracked it. A supervisor rushed over, asked for ID, she refused, and issued her an immediate trespass notice. I told her calmly, "We're done. Show up again, and you'll see what happens." 20 minutes later, we were back on the track with different carts. Laura won. Ray kept commentating. I filed the report. The hearing was that Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. I arrived early with a complete packet. Fiona arrived 5 minutes before the case was called. No lawyer heard a messy folder of papers. I presented receipts, agreements, and the refund trail. $1,247 plus the $78 filing fee. Her argument, he canceled the wedding. The magistrate asked for documentation. She had none. Judgment, $325. 15 minutes of testimony, 5 minutes of deliberation. 3 years of a relationship reduced to receipts. She paid within 2 weeks. The go-kart invoice was covered. The surveillance stopped. The rebuilt 340 from Butler County was installed the week before the hearing. The Challenger fired up mid-December. 3 weeks later, the final incident happened. Around 9 p.m., Laura and I were installing new seat covers when the motion light snapped on. Fiona stumbled into the driveway, pajamas, hoodie, clearly impaired, reeking of alcohol or worse. "Living your sad little life in this pathetic garage?" she slurred. Then she turned on Laura. Laura barely looked up and laughed. I called 911. Fiona ranted about how I'd ruined her life. Laura quietly pointed out that she'd cheated and caused her own problems. Officers arrived, gave her field tests, breathalyzed her, and arrested her for trespassing and public intoxication. She cried and blamed me while being handcuffed. After they left, we got back to work. "Well," Laura said, tightening a fastener, "that was entertaining." "Yep," I said. "Crazy girl." We finished the seats and took the Challenger out for a 20-minute night drive, the 340 rumbling perfectly through the exhaust. The best revenge is living well and spending your time with people who appreciate skill, integrity, and craftsmanship. Fiona moved on eventually, but she was the one who couldn't let go.